Today on True Patriot Love, I'm lucky enough to have Stan Sudol. Welcome, Stan.
How do you do?
We are going to talk about resources. And Stan, one of the things that came to my attention recently, I was in a group of people having dinner, and we started talking about EVs. And the announcement about EVs, we all heard about the Chinese EVs coming to Canada, the 49,000. And we got into a long debate about Stellantis and Volkswagen and the subsidies that actually the government had given to get these plants to come to Ontario, both federally and provincially. And it was a long discussion, went round and round. And at the end of it, someone said to me, well, we don't produce a lot of lithium. And I said, well, what do you mean we don't produce a lot of lithium? So, it got on to another topic. We started talking about the Leafs and their dismal end of the season and everything else. And, I went home and I actually jumped on my computer the next morning as I was having breakfast, and I pulled it up. And you know what? I was shocked. I was absolutely astounded that 2.6% of the world's production of lithium only comes from Canada.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I didn't know that. That's a new stat. Because quite frankly, I thought, okay, we doubled down on EV. We got, our carbon footprint initiative, to get rid of carbon. We were world leader in all these things we were doing. We must have thought through the resources we needed to get batteries into play at such a large scale. And what I found out is we really hadn't. And so I was shocked. I actually was like, okay, I guess we are not the world leader in lithium, but we want to basically go out front and get into the EV game in a big way. So help me a little bit, because I then dug in and I started to learn a little bit of lithium. I'm probably a junior lithium expert now, and I know you have a lot more knowledge than I do. And help me kind of, in Canada, where are we on the lithium front? Where are we producing it? Where are we mining it? And how do we refine it?
Okay. That's a lot to unpack.
A lot to unpack. So one by one, like, where is it?
Okay. There's two basic right now in the world that we get our lithium from two different sources. Hard rock spodumene is one of the sources. It's basically open pit mining. Australia is the largest lithium producer in the world, and all their lithium is hard rock spodumene mining. And you're basically digging it out of the ground, you're crushing it up to a certain, concentrating it to a certain level, around 6%, and then you ship that material to a refinery where it becomes either lithium hydroxide or lithium carbonate. And the potential for more lithium production in Canada would be hard rock spodumene. Okay. The other source of lithium is basically from what they call the lithium triangle, which is Argentina, Chile, and Bolivia. And Chile is the number two producer of lithium in the world. And that is, they basically pump up these fairly shallow lithium reservoirs. They pump it up. They basically have these huge evaporation ponds that you see. Many people see pictures of it. They're nice aquamarine or really pretty colors. And then it slowly evaporates. So it takes a couple of months before they can actually take that lithium and then put it through the processing. Where there's two other potential sources, and one of them is direct lithium extraction. So what they're doing is they're going to these lithium brines, and they're hoping to filter the product, the material, the watery material, filter it through membranes or some other mechanism to separate the contaminants from the pure lithium. And the purpose is, A, you can do it quicker, B, it's a smaller environmental footprint, but it's basically in the preliminary stages. There's a lot of expertise that's looking at it, and it may work or it may not. But as of today, April 2026, none of our lithium is coming from direct lithium extraction. Now, there's huge, you may have read recently in the Canadian media, there's a huge conversation about lithium, oil and gas, lithium brines in
Right.
Alberta.
Yeah.
And that the figures were like $1 trillion worth of potential lithium. And again, everyone, you read the headline, you go, oh my God, we've got it made in the shade. But again, it's preliminary.
Well, and it's interesting because when I'm doing my research, to be the junior expert, I get on this Alberta. We just been to Calgary, so I get on this, and I'd heard about this in my trip to Calgary. So in one of the dinners I was having, someone said, "Oh, we're gonna dominate the lithium market." I said, "Oh, well, that's really how much are you doing?" We're not doing anything right now, but quite frankly, we have 82.5 million tons. I'm like, well, I think we're only doing like 4,400 tons right now in the whole country. So you're telling me somewhere in the country we have 82 million tons of lithium.
But the lithium we actually do produce is from hard rock spodumene lithium deposits.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is the new sort of Alberta gas type lithium.
The replacement for oil and gas.
Yeah, exactly.
Allegedly.
Okay. So and you're right. They were saying the value was $1 trillion and all this. So that's kind of what I read when I got into it. So really that's, and it's interesting you say that, because when I was fishing around and reading about it and trying to get up to speed, I did see kind of their R&D center, which was this big pre-sprung tent in the middle of Alberta in a field. I saw that. So it is an experiment right now. It's in the kind of, hey, may happen, may not.
Exactly. And there's two problems, right? Like I don't want to sound Dr. Doom, okay? Because, initially, new innovation is always challenging, and it may be the start of something down the line, but I don't think the timelines that they talk about are necessarily as accurate or engraved in stone as they would like or like to propose. But the other problem with the oil and gas lithium brines are that they're a little deeper than what you have in Chile. They're very hot and acidic. So you've got some problem, and the grades are roughly 10 times lower than what you're getting in the lithium, averaging 10 times lower than what you're getting in the lithium triangle with their brines.
Right.
So you got to pump through a lot more water. You got to deal with the acidic conditions. You got to try to deal with taking out any contaminants. There's a lot of technical challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's what do you do? How do you deal with the contaminants, tailings? Are you going to put that back underground? It may be, it may all work,
Right.
But again, the cost. So then you always have to balance all of these issues, especially with new technology, with how much it costs to just do a hard rock spodumene lithium deposit.
Right. So, and as you're saying that, I'm sort of, it's interesting because then now a bunch of stuff is jumping into my head. I'm thinking, okay, weren't we kind of on this EV mission for 2030? Well, 2030, then it got pushed off to 2035. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, if we didn't necessarily have the lithium resources, we were trying to get on this mission to get the EVs at such a fast pace, which now we've kind of backed off, right?
Yes.
So probably wasn't ever a really realistic target because, quite frankly, we didn't even have the resource. We weren't producing enough of the resource to get to the quantity we needed. And we would have had to go on to, as you mentioned, Australia or China to get it, bring it back. There always seems to be an article somewhere about a shortage in lithium around the world somewhere. So we would have had to deal with shortages and whatever. Then we got to get it back. It really didn't ever seem plausible. So now when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, okay, so we backed off our targets. Is it plausible? Like, is it plausible for us to become self-sustaining in the lithium market to serve all these cars, to serve all these phones, to serve, like, are we ever going to, Australia did it, obviously, but they had kind of the climate and they had the ability to get there with the resources they had.
Okay. The short answer is yes.
Okay.
But the long answer is first, what ended up happening was this frenzy of EVs, and we were all in that EV bandwagon. It was kind of almost in the middle of COVID. I think we didn't have enough to do, so we just all went crazy and paid attention. The price of lithium spiked because of all these potential demand. Around 222, 223, it reached its peak, and then it collapsed almost 90%. So all of a sudden you have the price of lithium collapsing because China started producing a lot more. The market was flooded, and the world market was flooded with lithium. We weren't building enough EVs. And then all of a sudden, also with the price collapse, then it makes it harder for junior lithium explorers to actually raise the funds to actually go do their exploration. So, and now what's happening is we're seeing an uptick, okay? And then all of a sudden now, some analysts are saying, well, there's going to be a bit of a surplus this year. Other people are saying, well, but the ultimate demand moving forward to 2030, which is only 4 years away, is really optimistic. So we're going to be needing a lot more lithium. So now that's sort of in the interim, the junior exploration lithium hard rock junior exploration explorers were doing what they're doing. They're doing drilling. They're finding bigger lithium deposits, and what possibly could be a reason because a lot of our most of the press is English language. So, but a major elephant mother lode of lithium deposits are in the James Bay region of Quebec. Wow. So you might not have as many people paying attention to what they're doing in Quebec. And these are, and even you're seeing a lot of Australians who have experience looking for hard rock, lithium, spodumene deposits in Australia, going across the Great Pond, the Pacific, and are sprinkled throughout the James Bay region of Quebec because they're realizing that the humongous potential with finding the pegmatites, and the spodumene pegmatites, and this could be at least geopolitically one of the most secure and economic sources of lithium moving forward.
It's interesting, every time we get together, you bring up Quebec, and last time we were together, we went across and we just did a show on all the resources across Canada by region. Okay. And it was good for me because, quite frankly, it got my mind in the resource sector. It got me thinking again, since I came back to Canada years ago, and I'd forgot a lot about where all the resources were. So we did the show. I got up to speed, but Quebec had a ton of whether it's steel, aluminum, all the things you were filling me in on. And I was, reminded. Now we're talking about, possible separation of the province, again, is back on the table. And every time I have a show with you, I leave and think, oh my goodness, like, I hope Quebec isn't serious about separation because we get so much of our resources from Quebec, but we don't talk about it that much. Like, it's one of those things that you're right. It's kind of one of those James Bay, Quebec, we don't really talk about a lot. If you hadn't have told me where it was and that lithium was happening there, and does it get refined there too?
Well, right now, no. Okay, but Rio Tinto, which is the third largest miner in the world, has 2 lithium deposits, major lithium deposits.
Right.
And they bought sort of a bankrupt lithium processing facility from Nemaska. This was going to be the great hope for Quebec lithium. But they kind of peaked too early in the late teens, 2017, 2018. Finances, this, that. The upshot is it sort of was on care and maintenance. Rio Tinto came in. They are part owner with the Quebec government.
Right. Good decision by Quebec government.
With this proposed lithium refinery, which is roughly 70% complete, and part owner with one of the open pit lithium mines in the James Bay area. But Rio Tinto has also, which is the Wabouchi deposit, but Rio Tinto has its own Galaxy deposit that it owns 100%. So there's roughly maybe 50, 60 million tons in the ground. So Rio Tinto has to decide which one they want to start producing first from. And now they just said recently in the Globe and Mail that they're just slowing it down a bit. With some issues probably came up, but they expect the refinery to be in production by 2028. So that will be the second lithium refinery in North America, or at least Canada, US.
Right.
Elon Musk and Texas had just opened in January the first lithium refinery in the United States, or in United States, Canada.
Right. And I know they're doing some stuff that's very experimental also in Nevada.
Yes. So so as I said at the beginning, you've got either spodumene, hard rock mines that produce lithium, and the brines. Well, there's another type of lithium deposit called claystone deposits.
Right.
Now, they tend to be lower grade than the spodumene deposits, but massive. And there's a deposit called Thacker Pass. So it's if they can feasibly get this processed and get it working, it will be 100 years or more of lithium production. But that's the issue. Again, there has not been a economical commercial grade lithium claystone deposit developed anywhere in the world. So again, it's cutting edge. Their pilot plant, everything seems to work on paper, okay?
Yeah.
And the small pilot plant seems to be operating. The American government is invested in this company. GM is invested in this company.
I saw that. Yeah.
So, but I get worried because, like I said to you previously, Inco Vale built this huge nickel laterite project in New Caledonia. Billions of dollars, pilot plant, everything on paper said it's going to work great. And after $1 billion, still glitches, still problems. They're supposed to produce 60 million tons of nickel, never did. Then they tried putting in some more money to rectify all these glitches. Again, now they finally sold it because it became this huge white elephant or a money pit. And now it's a smaller organization, company has it, and they're producing some material from it. So I'm not an engineer. All I know is every time I talk to someone who says when you build with new technology, commercial scale plant that will cost billions of dollars, do not bet the house on it, because there are a lot of times there's glitches and your production levels might be a lot lower than you expect.
Well, they are in Nevada, Stan, so maybe they are betting the house on it.
Well, security supply is an issue, but sometimes it gets me annoyed with, especially with Trump and the politics. We are, as much as Carney is trying to shift us over to the Chinese, and as some columnist said today in the National Post, you're trading one hegemon for another, okay? But you know what? The Americans do not use slave labor. The Americans don't do all the nasty stuff that the Chinese do. And as Mulroney said a long time ago, and it still rings in my ear, you dance with the partner that brung you. The high standard of living that we have in this country is because we're next door to one of the richest societies in the history of mankind. I know Trump, with his 51st state or 53rd state or whatever, rattles a lot of Canadians. I know a lot of Canadians are upset because he does what he does, but he's only there for X amount of time. You're not going to destroy decades, if not a century, of friendship and close economic ties because of one president.
Oh yeah.
So anyways, so back to, I did years ago, I did a top 10 mining men in Canadian history, and 4 of them were Americans. Because for mining development, it's an invisible border. You have brain power and financing. A lot of our mines in Canada could not have been developed with American capital and expertise.
Yes.
So we are economically linked at the hip, and they shouldn't look at us as a foreign country in the sense of for resource wealth.
Interesting. And the Chinese, I want to go back to that for a minute, because a lot of the refining of lithium was shipped to China. It was actually refined and then came back. Is that the
Yeah.
So for years that's the cycle that we were in, and it continues. I think we're starting to change that, as you mentioned, as some refining coming here. Rio Tinto being a publicly traded company,
Yes.
I think in the UK and Australia, so
Yes.
it has its roots there. But again, I love that Quebec is actually partnering with them to actually make that happen. And keeping control of some of your resources or keeping your finger in it, so quite frankly, you can make it profitable for your province. Why does Quebec, in your opinion, because you deal with a lot of people, Quebec seems to be on the leading edge of mining in Canada, just because more innovative, the thought process, the government implementation. Is there anything that, because every time we talk, we're bringing up Quebec and how they're kind of leaping ahead, or just geographically, they're lucky enough to have located themselves in a region that is so prosperous with respect to resources, or are they more aggressive? Because Ontario seems to struggle at times with the mining process. We're a little slower, I guess, more red tape.
Well, there's a number of things, but Ontario basically is your manufacturing hub of Canada. I mean, when you look historically, the manufacturing from Oshawa to Windsor, and everything in between, and it's not just the autos, but the auto sector is the number one economic driver of the Ontario economy. And then for the country, it's number two, only eclipsed by oil and gas.
Right.
So Ontario's always had more focused on the manufacturing side. I mean, growing up in Sudbury and having relatives in London, and we'd take the drive and you'd have these horrible roads going down to Parry Sound. And the minute you pass Barrie and the highways are smooth, and it's like, this is Ontario paying attention to the manufacturing might of the South. Yep. Versus the hewers of wood and drawers of water, the miners in North, we just get dismissed, okay? But now that's changed, okay? But the roads are still pretty bad. But do you hear that, Premier Ford? We need to twin all the way across Northern Ontario. So Quebec didn't have as much manufacturing, at least, so they had to deal, but they did have a lot of electricity and power production. So that was one of the draws of bringing in the cluster of aluminum smelters and refineries in the Saguenay, because they gave them long-term contracts with very, very inexpensive electricity. And so that drew Alcan, Alcoa, and a few other companies in there. And you've got this cluster of aluminum expertise. Then you have, and they've always paid attention more so to the resources, because that was part of what was driving their economy. And then, of course, the James Bay lowlands during the 1970s, the damming of all these these rivers that go into James Bay, a huge bonus for Quebec in Hydro-Quebec, because you end up the expertise to actually construct these dams, the power it generates, the revenue they get from power sales to New York and the American Northeast, and lower power rates always made it a little bit easier for mineral development. And then also the old Rouen or Noranda and Val-d'Or camps, back in the 1920s, it was copper.
Right.
And so they built a copper smelter in Rouen. And then in the beginning of the Great Depression, in 1930-31, they built this massive copper refinery in Montreal. What a gift. Think about that. The whole country's going into a depression, and there's Noranda building a massive copper refinery in Montreal, which at that time employed a heck of a lot more people than they do today. So they understood the power and the resource potential of building from the minerals that were in the land. And also, what was a spinoff from that refinery was a lot of copper wire and other copper products that they built at the time.
Right.
So now you're just seeing that a little now with lithium, because lithium being the new oil of the future and the electrification of everything. Once they started looking at the geology in the James Bay region, they just went, "Oh my God! Look at these massive spodumene pegmatite deposits that have lithium in them."
Right.
So again, the Quebec government sort of saw that as a real big potential, and so this is when Nemaska the forerunner of the refinery that Rio Tinto picked up, was looking for funding, then the investment arm of the Quebec government went into it because it's a good investment for the people of Quebec long term.
Oh yeah, it's interesting. So we've been doing a lot of shows, of course, on pipelines and oil and gas, and doing some comparisons between Canada and Norway, which is looking at Equinor and sort of the division in '73 when they went one way and we went another way.
Yes.
And how it's benefited them for their their heritage fund, and now they've grown to $1 trillion. And where we went the other way, we went to Petro-Canada and then we sold it off. And yeah. So, we've been looking at different things on that front. And I'm kind of listening to this lithium story and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I get it. It sounds like it's coming, right? So it sounds like, yes, we're 2.6%. Yes, we're going to grow. Yes, there are deposits. There's the ability to get into refinement, but it's going to take a while.
Yes.
So the vision and the timeline that we originally were talking about was really never feasible from respect to an EV, and whether even the rollout of charging stations and all that good stuff across the country. I don't think we ever thought that was going to happen. And now looking at lithium itself, it's not going to happen on that timeline. So the oil and gas, we were talking about it before. We still have to deal with oil, and quite frankly, oil is in every part of what we do.
Yes.
And so, when we were talking about them which was interesting, at one point we were having this conversation like they were exclusive. They were doing one without the other. We were going to get rid of this and get this. It really isn't going to happen that way. And I think, you made a good point before. I think as more people got into a greener, emission-free discussion, they forgot that. They got into it, it just sounded like, we were going to shift off to EVs. It was going to be self-supportive. It was going to be easy. It's not, right? So it's going to take time. I think we'll get there, but it's going to take the time to develop the lithium industry. And that is something that I think we didn't talk about enough. I think we were having this discussion and we weren't breaking down the components. So we were saying, okay, let's do EVs. Great. Okay, we can build cars, right? But then, where do we get the lithium? Where does the lithium get refined? Where does it, lithium is very, what I'm learning as I get more into lithium, in its final production, it's very volatile. So it's not as easy once you get it out of the ground, once you refine it, once you get it into play, actually the components and putting it into phones or batteries or whatever, there's a lot of challenges that I didn't realize when I started reading about it due to heat and the offsets that come from it.
Oh yeah, so the specs have to be spot on. You can't just, some junior who may have 10 million tons of lithium in the ground and then is just sending out an email saying a news release saying, oh yes, and we intend to build a lithium refinery. Not going to happen. That first, Australia was in that scenario where they were huge amount of lithium production, massive mines. So you have the lithium, then you concentrated it, but they were shipping all their lithium to China. So they really pushed and built 2 lithium refineries. One of them is shut down because there's technical challenges, even for Australian.
Who's so far ahead, and they're even having challenges with it. Yes, I read that.
So when you have some junior with a small deposit in northwestern Ontario saying, well, I'm going to build I need money to build a lithium refinery. Yeah, you know what? The entry, many people in lithium, especially in the Quebec side of the lithium, hard rock lithium world, basically says, the basic entry point is about 50 million tons, and then it goes up from there. So if you don't even have 20 million tons or 15 million tons, you're a little bit of a minnow. Go back, do some more drilling, and come back when we see 50 million tons, and then we can talk with the big boys, so to speak.
Yeah. And we're, that's the challenge. We're such a small provider, such a small producer right now.
Yes. Right now. The quantitative words.
Yeah. And so we're say we get, we double our production by 28. That would be a leap.
Okay.
I think in my mind, quite frankly, if we go from 4 to 8,
It all
1,000
depends, because I
tons.
don't know what the timelines are going to be, because remember, even last year, it was a horrible forest fire season in Quebec.
Right.
In
Oh,
northern
wow.
Quebec, and you know what? We don't even think about it down here. I mean, we may complain that we're getting a little bit of smoke or whatever in Toronto from these forest fires in northern Ontario or Quebec, but the junior exploration was really slowed down, especially in Quebec, because of and a lot of the lithium junior exploration lithium guys had to slow down or stop because of these forest fires. So once and like I say, you know, we're starting to see an uptick. People are starting to realize, okay, the glut is disappearing, and we really do need a supply of lithium, and we do need it with. Say what you will about President Trump, he has made the issue of mineral security supply one of the number one issues on his agenda. Like I said the last time, when was the last time we actually had a U.S. president going on about mineral security ever? And it is a priority. So that is helping, and of course the Quebec government understands the importance of it, and I suspect we're going to see a lot of interesting and positive news out of Quebec's James Bay lithium exploration sector.
Well, it's interesting. A couple of things we just did. When you're bringing up the wildfires, we just did a show yesterday, which was very interesting, about people's inability to get insurance now after the wildfires.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very interesting. If you get to watch it, so because insurance companies are now struggling and their policies are removing it. So there's lots of issues for companies and homes
Yes.
in the region. So to think about, last night, we did another show on Iran, and it was, after everything going on, and I won't get into the whole show, but now, with the ceasefire, or whatever, what do we call this thing we're doing now? But with the 2-week ceasefire, and if this thing gets resolved and the peace plan comes about, the U.S., leaves, Iran takes possession of the strait again and starts to control it and charges a fee for passage and everything else. It does have long-term effects on our resource sector here in Canada.
Absolutely.
So lithium then becomes a really key element, because now it kind of subdivides the world, and the resource sectors and the sharing of resources changes the whole dynamic on how we are going to do business. So as Americans and Canadians, relook at how the world order has been divided, lithium is a key. And so quite frankly, this whole lithium discussion that we kind of glazed over when we got into the world, we kind of like, okay, we're going to do this, but we're going to buy it from other people. We're going to bring it in and we're going to put it into our cars here. It's your point about, and I'm glad you took us through about Ontario being the manufacturing hub.
Yep.
We were kind of like thinking of it only as manufacturers. We weren't thinking of it as miners and processors and refiners. And now we're thinking of it that way. And quite frankly, I think the importance of it will become even more. It'll become even more paramount given the world order's changing and how resources are going to be shared.
Absolutely. Just to back to the Strait of Hormuz, a lot of people were really shocked and surprised at the holdup of not only oil and gas, but a material for fertilizer that got blocked off because of the straits, and aluminum. And because a lot of the Gulf states have massive aluminum refineries because of the cheap power, natural gas. And of course, we have this whole issue with Donald Trump and the tariffs on the aluminum industry in Quebec. So right away, it just ricochets back to, don't bite the hand that feeds you. Like the aluminum industry has been integrated with the American economy for almost 100 years, and the supply lines have been really are quite long term, and maybe for the Americans, they could like look at this and like basically say, look, it's not doing us any good by beating up the aluminum industry in Quebec, when a lot of aluminum that we were maybe expecting from the Gulf is not available.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring up fertilizer. I was just reading the other day, India is already challenged, with potential a famine
Yes.
because of the delay for fertilizers coming across because of the strait. You know, these ricochets of things that happen,
Unintended consequences.
unintended consequences. And the funny thing, you know, it's not sometimes intended consequences that aren't well thought out. And this lithium thing, to me, it just speaks to that, quite frankly. We go in a direction, we don't fully think out of all the consequences of what could happen. This strait, you know, I did a show on it the other day. Honestly, the fact that we could all be held in this position for something that is 20 nautical miles wide,
Yes.
2 miles of passage at 80 meters deep for these tankers, and we're in this position because of it, changing the dynamics of our whole world, is bizarre. It's bizarre that no one risk managed that and thought through it and said, okay. But I don't think we did. I don't, honestly. I think in 1973, you know, during the Yom Kippur War and the embargoes,
Yes.
I think we got into it. I think after that went away, we all just got happy again. You know, it's like when you go and you get injured or something happens. Once you're better, you forget that ever happened again, and you just start walking or running and having fun again. You don't think about what happened in the past. You put it out of your mind. I think we did that in a lot of ways. When we started thinking of this EV sector, we started thinking, okay, let's get into EVs. We stopped thinking about all the potential risks that were in there and things that could happen. Now it's forefront. You know, we're seeing the oil impacts. You know, today down $15 more from last night, right away. Even on a 2-week, ceasefire.
But you see, well, we had 10 years of Trudeau and Gerald Butts and Guilbeault and all the green fanatics in the liberal government that were just singing the song about basically we're going to enter the EV age. We don't need oil and gas. Forgot the issue that natural gas produces enormous amounts of material that are absolutely critical for chemical fertilizer production. If we don't have natural gas, you don't have chemical fertilizers, then perhaps almost 1/4 of the population of the globe starves to death because the crop yields will plunge. So we were sort of lulled into it. And at those 10 years are 10 lost years. And we should have been, producing liquid natural gas plants on the West Coast. But there were also some proposals for the East Coast, which Trudeau bravely said there was no business case. And had we done that, we would have been, our budgets might have been even balanced if they weren't in their little fanatical green bubble. And so we would have been a great ally to Germany and Western Europe, supplying natural gas from New Brunswick, because there were some projects there, as well as Japan and Taiwan and South Korea, who would have desperately loved more natural gas from Canada.
Oh yeah. No, and we talk about it all the time. And you know, again, it's the strategy of EVs. I'm not opposed to. I don't. You know, it's inevitable. It happens. It's happening across the world. Cars are changing. You know, whether they're self-driving, whether they're powered by electricity. The issue becomes in parallel how you do it, and that's, I think, where we tend to fall short because we don't think the issues through. And this lithium issue, to me, is just, quite frankly, one of the many items that we don't think through, and we haven't really bounced into. We haven't dedicated ourselves to get up and become a leader. Look at Australia. Like Australia, how many years ago was Australia really decimated? Australia was in rough shape 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
2 decades ago, when you talked about Australia, people, you'd be at a party and someone would say, you hear about Australia and you'd be like, yeah, it's a real mess right now, right? They made active decisions to change the course of that country, right? They weren't going to subsidize companies anymore. They got out of subsidizing auto, got out of subsidizing manufacturing. They said, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to put our money into technology. We're going to reinvest in mining and resources. And they got into it, and look at them now, right?
They're a powerhouse between their natural gas, liquid natural gas production, the iron ore. They still produce coal, steel making and thermal, in Queensland. and of course lithium. Like they don't snub their mining sector, and they have a higher standard of living than Canada.
Oh yeah.
And this is the unfortunately, especially in southern Ontario, this snubbing of mining. Oh well, that's just dirty. Like I literally remember in 2000 and 1999, mining was a sunset industry. A lot of the political pundits and the left-wing newspapers, this was the beginning of the dot-com boom, and we should just look at technology, let poor countries do the mining, the dirty stuff. We're so prim and proper, we don't want to get into that stuff. 25 years later, boy, has that tune changed. Realizing that all these EVs that you want to build, well, they're made out of the stuff we dig out of the ground. Lithium being absolutely a critical part of it. Nickel isn't an issue because my hometown of Sudbury, we're still digging nickel out of the ground. We've been doing it for 130 years, and for all we know, we might be doing it for another 130 years. So we have nickel, copper, cobalt. But the lithium, that is, I really do believe Quebec will be a lithium powerhouse. And I wish the federal government would start investing. I mean, I know they gave money to the direct lithium extraction in Alberta.
Right.
And I'm not saying don't do that, but that's an experiment. The material, the now and here, the here and now that we can get actual lithium out of the ground and into the product is going to happen in Quebec. And acknowledge that, and maybe put more research and development into lithium processing. What else do we need to do in the James Bay region for infrastructure? If there's something lacking, like actually talk to the people in that region and to the bureaucrats in Quebec City and say, look, we need to turbocharge this industry. What else can we do to help you guys ensure that the next generation of lithium deposits are going to come in Quebec and are going to be prosperous?
Well, we talk about on many shows the Chinese, and different, I get it, different political system, different economy. But when they make up their mind to go into an industry, right, they go in and they strategically plan it out. They build the cities, they build the roads, they build the entertainment for the people. They incentivize their citizens to move to that city, to get in that industry, to get that resource, to get that thing done, to manufacture it, refine it, and get it to market. Those are things that we haven't done. And quite frankly, it's sad that we don't do it. I think, with all this going on in the world, and we just were talking about Iran a few minutes ago, with what's happening now, that will change.
Yes, I'm hoping so.
I do believe it will change. It'll, at a necessity, we'll be forced to refocus ourselves on things that do make us more productive, make us are better investments for the country. So, as we all refocus back on Canada and the Western Hemisphere and what's going on and trading with each other, it'll hopefully cause us to kind of wake up and say, okay, here are our key resources. Here's what to go after. And quite frankly, with the changing environment of manufacturing, we're seeing it now, right? And it's kind of funny. We do show after show on housing. Well, housing's not moving. Housing's not growing. Housing's not, okay, because you need the other sub-industries to make housing go. Housing, you can do it all you want. You can build more houses. You can build more affordable houses. You can do whatever you want with houses. You can subsidize houses. If you don't have industries around those houses that'll allow people to make incomes and buy them and do all those things, it makes no sense. You have to get that manufacturing structure, whether in Ontario, moving again. You can only do that by doing things in Ontario, building things in Ontario, aside from housing. Housing's a result. It's not the core business, right? And I think we lost focus on that. We got sort of focused on, we got going in COVID. We got focused on a bunch of things, whether it be tech, and I tech's important. AIs, they're all great things. When I'm hungry and my family wants to eat at dinner, I can't eat tech.
Yeah.
Right. I need energy. I need food. I need all those things to make the world move. Those happen by creating industries that manufacture things, create things, and build things.
Yes.
Yeah. And quite frankly, that's kind of where we went sideways during COVID, and I hope we come back.
Yeah, and the resource sector is it's the foundation of everything, basically. And even when you look at the potash or phosphate mines, again, going into fertilizer, if we didn't dig those out of the ground, well, then we wouldn't have the crop yields that we have, and people would starve. It's fundamentally is what are we teaching our kids in school? Like, I mean, I've always thought, you know, we need some sort of a resource education program, and I'm not looking for propaganda, but just some basic facts that, you know, and the whole issue of power for these electric vehicles. Well, what people don't understand is that everyone goes on about wind and solar, but whatever the plate capacity of, say, 100 gigawatts of wind or solar, well, with wind, we can only use 30% of that capacity, and with solar, 20%. We always have to have a backup.
Right.
And that's what, you know, when people say, oh, well, we'll just do, oh, well, batteries. Well, the batteries aren't that big. Governments have to make a decision on we need industry. We need power for industry. Yes, solar and wind, it may be inexpensive, but again, when the wind doesn't blow or the sun doesn't shine, where do we get our power? Mm-hmm. And there's only the holy five, I always call it. There's coal, there's oil, there's gas, there's uranium, and there's hydro.
Right.
Those five is what we get electricity from. Each of them have their drawbacks, I agree. But if you want your lights to go on in the morning and you want a job that requires electricity to, or you even want to go onto your laptop, you need power, and that is how we get it.
Yeah.
And to have these left-wing editors in the media go on and make it sound like, well, we don't need this. We could get rid of the oil and gas industry, and we can just have solar and wind, is just it's almost like yelling fire in a crowded movie theater, because people will read that and believe it. And some of our politicians read that and believed it. And during the McGuinty Wynne era, they made some disastrous, costly investments in solar and wind that we're still paying for because they read that in the Toronto Star or the Globe and Mail, which I think is going very left wing, in my opinion, and they believed it, and they made these massive decisions that we will be paying for, and the next generation will be paying for.
Yeah, it's a shame. We all know, unfortunately, and especially where we are today in Ontario, we see that even today, as we travel around, and some of the bad decisions that were made.
And the subsidies that, unfortunately, people are going, well, it's not sustainable for Ford to subsidize power rates. Well, true, but what these Toronto Star columnists don't say is it was the Liberals that got us into this mess, and he's trying to do his best. And look, there are things Ford does that I'm not happy with, and there are tons of things Trump does that I'm not happy with. But right now, the left is not giving me anything at all that I think is doable.
Is a feasible solution.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, lithium. Just as we, before we go, so. We talked about it, crystal ball. So crystal ball me for a minute. So 5 years, 10 years from now, are we having this conversation? Is lithium, are we a major producer of lithium?
We will be. I honestly do. With the sizes of some of these deposits, of the exploration, is just massive. Just let me just say, Winsome Resources, 78 million tons, Q2 Metals, between 225 to 334 million tons. PMET lithium, we're looking at 108 million tons. These are just massive resource calculations, and a lot of these are still open at depth and open along strength and line. We've just scratched the surface in the James Bay region. Quebec is sitting in the driver's seat in the lithium, in my belief. I think, and it'll happen a lot sooner. And I'm not trying to dismiss what possibly might happen in Alberta with the direct lithium extraction in the oil and gas brines, but that's a bit of a gamble, and the technology isn't there yet. Whereas what we're exploring for in the James Bay region of Quebec is a done deal. Once we find it, once the infrastructure is there, We can dig it out of the ground, we can concentrate it, and maybe 2 or 3 more lithium refineries will be set up in Quebec, especially with those good power rates. If they give them the same power rates as they give the aluminum, Quebec to me could easily be definitely North America's Australia when it comes to.
So you heard it from Stan. So if you're young, you're looking for a trade, number one, learn how to speak French.
Yes.
So, and head up, learn the lithium business, get involved. It's a great business. It has a growth potential, of course.
I think so.
Stan, thank you again. Merci for my limited French. And for those of you watching, stay tuned for more resource shows. Really interesting as the world's changing. We're going to be talking more about resources. Subscribe, follow us on our website and our app, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Patriotic means looking out for each other and fixing things together.
True patriotism is being in the country you love, surrounded by people you love, and great weather.
Being a patriot is being a part of your community and caring for it.
It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, patriotism is the one thing we all share.
It's okay to be critical of government and still be a patriot.
It's gratitude to your country.
Of course I'm a patriot. I'm Canadian. It's my home.
Well, actually, true patriot love is the mission.